Welcome back to the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast. We thank our listeners out there each and every week as we come out on the airwaves and share a little bit more about the cool areas in restaurant technology that we're learning about. Today is not going to be any exception. Today we are joined by an extremely special guest, and I can't wait for Adam to introduce himself. But Adam, why don't you introduce yourself to your audience? Who is Adam Ahmad, and then we can talk a little bit about what you get the privilege of doing.
Amazing. Jeremy, thank you so much for having me here. Huge fan of the show. So it's a bit surreal for me to actually be here after listening to you for so many years. My name is Adam Ahmad. I am a serial entrepreneur, currently and the founder and CEO of Kea, which is a voice AI company that is helping restaurants really defeat the labor shortage, effectively augments a cashier in the cloud that is deployed at restaurants to answer the phone. Previous to this, spent the last better part of the decade helping restaurants from food delivery and a labor shortage app, and really have dedicated a lot of my career towards helping restaurants, especially the last 10 years. Hope to do the next 10 years the same. Really am passionate about helping restaurant owners.
Well, I appreciate your modesty, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about some of that background, kind of your last 10 years? Tell us a little bit more. What have you done in that space that I guess qualifies you to have our listeners go, oh, this dude's somebody really worth listening to because he's solved some problems before, and
Yeah.
where you're at now. I know we'll dig super deep into that.
Yeah, no, totally. So it really starts, I would say, back in 2012. I had a chance to go to Penn. I had stars in my eyes, being at Wharton, studying economics, and effectively, I told my mom and dad, I'm like, look, I'm really into tech. I want to take a year and go out to Silicon Valley and try my hand at a startup. And they're like, what are you talking about? And after that whole ordeal, ended up going out to this hacker house where I found on Airbnb basically 40 people living in this massive mansion, 20 bunk beds, and Airbnb at the time at this particular one was $15 a night for a bed. And I didn't know what I was going to do, didn't know what the idea was going to be. I just knew that growing up was very enamored by technology and wanted to be in the tech arena in some way, shape, or form. Grew up doing all sorts of eBay businesses, and tech was always something very close to my heart. And so showed up at this Airbnb with, kind of stars in my eyes. And I didn't actually end up getting a bunk bed. They're like, we're out of bunk beds, but by the way, there's a desk over there where you can put a blanket underneath it and you'll have to pay the same price. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That sounds
Mm-hmm.
crazy. But the guys over there were doing their PhDs at Stanford. They're writing code on the wall, and it really got me even more excited about being a part of this, Silicon Valley community. And so one of the biggest problems at this house was actually food. You get all these new Airbnbers every day. So if you buy groceries, you'd open the fridge, and all of a sudden you see like half your bread's gone. The cereal is like half empty.
Mm-hmm.
And so we find the guy with the car, would all jump into the car and go down to downtown Palo Alto, Mountain View, wherever we could go grab a bite to eat. And this whole ordeal, because we were up in Los Altos Hills, kind of farther away from the restaurants, like this is taking us an hour and a half, 2 hours every day. What if we just got somebody, paid them, 10, $15, and got them to deliver some food to our house? And all of a sudden, of course, myself and a couple of my engineering buddies were like, wait a minute, this could be like an on-demand app where literally any restaurant could deliver. McDonald's, our favorite restaurant, Orange Hummus, all these different favorites that we had. We could actually just put up the menus on a site and have people order. As we're prototyping this app, 3 weeks later, 2 miles away on Stanford campus, DoorDash launches for the very first time. And back then, they weren't called DoorDash; it was called Palo Alto Delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were like, wait a second, we're doing the same thing. And all of a sudden, here we are prototyping an app. We called it Food Lovers United Company, and the FLUC for short, FLUC. And we were basically head to head with Palo Alto Delivery slash DoorDash. And, started out as a delivery driver, ended up calling restaurants, went door to door to try to get these commission deals. And all of a sudden, here we are building a delivery business head to head with these guys. And we ended up, going a couple thousand restaurants deep before the company was ultimately gobbled up by Google Shopping Express. So got to be, on the ground, did operations to sales, was very much into that experience, and just loved the whole fact that many different constituencies were benefiting here, right? There's the driver, there's the
Hmm.
restaurant, right? And then there's the consumer. Building that marketplace, I think, was definitely a labor of love. And I think it inspired me to really continue the journey, right? I almost feel like I should have stayed in a little bit longer, but at the time, I didn't know what I was doing. I was 20 something years old. And we ended up, having that business do well. After that, wanted to continue the journey, kept in the restaurant space, and helped this company out called NextForce Technology, where, let's say, Jeremy, you have 5 McDonald's in the Bay Area. I've got 5 McDonald's. Both of us are really hurting on labor. Rather than us hiring new people as franchisees, imagine combining those labor forces together, you pulling out an app as a manager and saying, hey, I'm down a cashier. I don't have enough people. Why don't I just hit request for a cashier? And one
Uh-huh.
of Jeremy's cashiers could actually come to my location and vice versa. We'd kind of share people with one another. Again, grew that to a few thousand restaurants, McDonald's being the marquee client of ours, and just very much learned the pain of not having enough people inside the restaurant, right? I think it really started around 2015, the rise of the on-demand economy, Uber Eats, DoorDash, right? All these on-demand gigs. Why work a 6-hour fryer shift when you could go and work 2 hours in the morning on Uber, 2 hours at night in Instacart? And so this huge phenomena, I think, became and is continuing to be the norm, right? The more
Yeah.
preferred work, type of work that people want to do, have that flexibility. Whereas you can't really do that in the restaurant space. And
Hmm.
you know, as I'm going to restaurant, going to all these conferences, going to all these FAC meetings with a lot of these large franchise groups, everyone's talking about labor. It wasn't until I'm in Vegas, 2017, at a Wingstop conference, the COO goes up on the stage and is addressing all the franchisees, and he's like, "Guys, we're hurting so bad on labor that really there's three areas where we're really, being challenged. Number
Uh-huh.
one, it is guest satisfaction. Our Yelp reviews are at least 1 star lower than they were last year, and that's obviously a very big deal out of 5. Number two, food is taking longer to cook because of the lack of labor. It's going from 17 minutes to get an order out the door to now like 22 to 25 minutes, which means the lines are longer out the door, which means, of course, less sales, right? You see that long line at lunch, can't be bothered waiting that long. You're going to go somewhere else. And then the last thing was that 60% of the phone calls that are coming in result in, hey, can you please wait on hold? And you've got 3 or 4 or 5 phone lines sitting inside the store that are just going beep, 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 or, just flashing with the little red light on the phone. I think every restaurant owner can resonate with that problem. And, all of a sudden people just don't want to wait. They hang up, they try calling back. I've seen call logs where people are calling 15 times even back to the store
Yeah.
just to try to reach their favorite restaurant on a Friday night. And it's impossible, right? You're driving, usually these aren't customers that will pull out their app while they're driving. They just want to call on their way back home from work. And these sales aren't being materialized. To give you perspective, that's for a brand like a Wingstop or some of these larger pizza chains like a Domino's, Papa John's, that could result in several $100,000 lost in sales
Absolutely.
over a course of a year. So it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks after hearing these stats. That when the guy went to the next slide, he's like, "We're going to use all of our hiring subscriptions. You're going to keep a full pipeline." And as I'm sitting in the chair, selling this labor app, evangelizing, getting more people in stores, even our own stats were kind of going down. We were filling in less people in these shifts than ever before, right? Because of this lack of labor. And then of course the pandemic hit, and that hit it even harder. And so anyways, long story short, got inspired by this experience, wanted to actually test the theory. Are we really losing that much business? Is it
Mhm.
really true that we're losing 50, 60% of calls? So I went to an owner in San Jose. I said, hey, want to do an experiment with you? I want to take over your calls for a weekend, forward them here to my cell phone, and just answer call after call. Hey, thanks for calling Wingstop. Is this for pickup or delivery? What can I get for you today? Try to upsell them on the calls, really try to maximize that value of every transaction as if I was just the dedicated resource only answering phones. And by the end of that weekend, we compare apples to apples. Like, what were the sales that cashiers were able to do, and what were the sales just me doing this full time?
Mhm.
And I was up about $3,800 over just one weekend
Wow.
doing this, manually, right? We ended up doing it for a full week. Got a couple of other guys around my dining table, or slinging wings, trying to sell the extra fries, and in aggregate, according to the previous weeks compared to what we were able to do, we were up about $5,600 on average across a couple of restaurants, and it became very clear that this is something that needs to be autonomous, right? That this is really where the industry has to head, whether it be robotics, right? Doing the actual production, whether it be taking these phone calls or answering common guest questions inside the restaurant or outside the restaurant at a drive-through. I think ultimately, if we look back at the next 10 years, this is truly, I think, going to feel like the renaissance of AI, voice AI
Mhm.
particularly, which we're extremely excited about. And here we are doing voice AI for specifically for restaurants on the phone ordering side.
Well, and I guess that's really, you went through that whole backstory, which is awesome, and I love the history. And not gonna lie, that I'm a little bit older. That I've got younger siblings that did the Silicon Valley thing, and I'm like, that's not real. And they're like, no, 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 dude. I have a brother that went to San Francisco State, and so he's like, no, no, no. I totally know all of these people that like went straight from college straight into this world, and I'm like, that really happened. So I love that you shared a little bit of insight as to
Yeah, I
sleeping
never
under
never would
Jasper
have
the
thought it would
same.
happen, but I'm so happy that I took that leap of faith when I did, and had very supportive parents, which of course helped make
Yeah.
that gap. Yeah,
No, I love that. I love that. I mean, I love that really is a story. And so you talked about kind of what got you there. Why don't you give a little 2-minute story on kind of what is Kia? Where are you guys going? Because for our audience out there, a lot of times when I talk to people about solutions like yours, their experience with voice AI was calling American Express, was calling Delta Airlines, and that's the AI experience that they have. And most people, most restaurateurs that I talk to, look at me and go, "There is no way a computer is going to be able to deal with the complexity of that problem." The other thing I get, which I'd love, we can talk a little bit more about throughout the conversation, is
totally.
you don't get that many phone calls. So why don't you give a quick overview of what is voice AI and how is Kia solving that problem?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always love, starting this with, what does actually Kia stand for? And so the definition of a Kia is actually it's a species of a parrot in New Zealand. It's the smartest bird in the world. And the idea was similar to how a parrot, learns what you're saying, kind of repeats it back, similar to
Love
what we
that.
do with the voice AI. We're doing the same, for restaurants to start. But taking a step back, giving you that kind of spiel on where we started, how we got here back in 2017 to where we are now, and how we think about the world. It's dramatically changed, right? Back then, it was, look, we've got this phone ordering problem. It's very clear, it's very difficult for two, three, four humans with 15 calls coming at the same time to be able to answer at the same time. It's almost impossible, right? And
Mhm.
even and that continues to be the state of the world today, where the labor is dwindling. It's still very difficult, if not more difficult, post pandemic. And so, just again taking a step back, how we think about the world now is that really what Kia is building for the future is ultimately the voice for any business, right? Whether you are a hair salon, whether you are a doctor's office, or an oil or mechanic at an oil change place, you're getting all these calls for random things that you can't actually fulfill, right?
Hmm.
We almost see ourselves as the Shopify for any business, right? We want to be that front where you can actually now get all those leads in and fulfill them with by leveraging technology, right? Particularly on the voice side. We're starting with restaurants, right? We really feel that
Picked an
there's
easy one, right?
yeah, I mean,
Can't just schedule a haircut at a hair salon. You started with super complex because as you obviously are aware, and
yeah,
all of our listeners that live in this space, restaurants are pretty complex, organisms that move and change and pivot, and then you add the guest element on it with hundreds of thousands of guests a year. It only exemplifies the challenge.
yeah, totally. It's kind of a beast of a problem to solve from a technical angle. And sometimes I think back, like, why didn't we do the other thing? But I think, going back to just my background and my passion, I really love restaurants. I've seen kind of the blood, sweat, and tears these guys put in. Just having that extra helping hand, what it does to their business is transformative, right? So really gravitated towards that originally. I think we're going to continue to, over the next several years, play within this space and help really wherever voice is being used within the restaurant to help them augment what otherwise a cashier would do, right? An attendant would do, and help augment that human effectively, right? And be that extra virtual helping hand in whichever format that may be.
Yeah. So again, just for our listeners that may have not heard it, the idea that Adam and his team are building is the ability for a computer, for an AI, and take the word AI and almost replace it with a computer, to be that responsive person as if it was a staff member that you've trained. And so, um, Adam, you talked about a statistic from the Wingstop presentation that kind of inspired you to go there. That was quite shocking to me, but probably more real, and now even more real than it was back in 17 or 16 or whenever it is that you heard that, which is that 60% of calls get put into a place of getting put on hold. And again, talking with restaurant owners, they're like, no, 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 we don't get that many phone calls. Or you have no idea. We've driven everybody to the app. I guess combat those things that you are also likely hearing from your prospects and customers that says, we've already got a solution to solve that problem. Just go to the app and it'll solve it, or whatnot. But it was shocking to me to hear that 60% of calls get put into a wait state, which means there is some level of attrition of people saying, I'm not putting up with that wait, I'm out. And so,
Totally.
losing those sales, and evidenced by your weekend around the dining room table doing that yourself. So talk to me a little bit about for those people that don't believe that this is truly a problem worth solving, how would you address that concern and that comment?
Yeah. So I think, contrary to popular belief, the phone is actually the dominant way that we place orders here in the States, and globally, it's an even bigger phenomenon, right? If you look at the DoorDashes of the world, when they went IPO, you'll hear a lot of the execs in the room, and even a lot of publicly traded online ordering companies say our biggest competition is actually the phone.
Hmm.
People still think it's the fastest and easiest way to order. And technically it is. You think about the phone, there's no UI. You don't have to download an app, wait 30 seconds, create an account, add everything to the card, figure out how this app works, put your credit card information. It's a 5 to 7 minute ordeal versus saying, hey, I'd like a large, cheese pizza, 2 liter of Coke, and a cheesy bread, and then you're done.
Hmm.
But because of the constraints, again, in the restaurant industry, it's become a very cumbersome experience, right? You're waiting on hold, maybe you're calling several times. You might not be hearing the other person on the other end really well. Could you say it again? I didn't quite get your delivery address. It's become even a very subpar experience, I would say, up until now, and up until our company, Kia, and a couple of peers have actually started to tackle this problem in a first class way. And so, again, going back, contrary to popular belief, it is the dominant way that orders are placed for the restaurant industry. If we look at the entire industry, to put that into numbers, globally, we spend $200 billion ordering via voice, and
Holy smoke.
60 billion of that is over the phone. So, obviously you've got your drive-through and other ways you can order, but 60 billion is what we're talking about. So very, very large amount. And, I would say it's quite complementary to online ordering and mobile ordering, right?
Hmm.
It's a modality where it just works. It's easy. Again, you're driving in that situation. What's the easiest? You press a button, you
Yep.
start talking, you place your order versus as you're driving, you got your phone in your hand. It just doesn't work. So situationally, we often see that the phone ordering customers are actually mobile ordering customers, and vice versa. It's
Yeah.
it's it's a very symbiotic thing, and I think what will happen over the next several years is as voice gets better and more autonomous and more human-like, it's actually going to, I think, flip the curve a bit. It's going to be more people ordering via voice in different formats, right? Whether that be Siri, Alexa, your actual phone, or other voice devices. But as it gets better and better, it's going to, I think, take the lion's share of the market against mobile ordering and online ordering.
Well, and I think I was about to say before you hit on that point, Adam, which is I there's brands that I won't order from via voice because it was such a bad experience so many times.
Right.
There's other brands that I won't order on digitally or through the third party delivery apps because it's been such a bad experience. And so they've lost me as a consumer in that modality. They may not have lost me as a consumer altogether, but they've lost me in a consumer, as a consumer, because you know what? There's times that I've called brands, and I'm sure we've all done this, where you call and you wait on hold long enough while you're driving to the restaurant that you might as well just shown up and walked in and ordered because you got it
Crazy.
in 30 seconds before you showed up. It's like, dude, I had a 10-minute drive and I called because I wanted it to start cooking so that I was only there for 5 minutes.
Right.
And then we've got my buddies who are like, I'll call it in. And then they leave right away because it's a place that has alcohol and they might go have a beer or two while they're
Gotcha.
waiting for the food to be cooked. And so,
Right.
but
Right.
yeah, in general, there's brands that for me personally, they've lost my phone order because it was such a bad experience. And so I'd love to have you, to use the technical term, double click a little bit on why you think that voice ordering is going to become that dominant way. Is it because of just ease and, like, will even look at my phone for even the weather. I ask Alexa for the weather in the morning when I'm getting dressed because it's easier. I mean, for me, selfishly, it's easier to do that than to dig around, go find my phone, go click on the weather app to go figure out, do I need pants on or do I need shorts on or whatever, whatever it may be. I happen to live in Texas. It's summertime, so I'm always wearing shorts, but different
Yeah.
conversation. So, but I guess why do you believe that voice is going to become so much more dominant than even digital as time goes on?
Yeah. So I think right now, if we look at the current state, like you just mentioned a great example, you talk to Siri, you ask her what's the weather, and then you kind of stop there, right? You even if you throw it another thing or two, it'll often get confused and be like, sorry, I didn't quite understand that. Could you help me out here? And say that again. And
Mhm.
that's a very subpar experience. The reason I believe that it's going to be so much better, and it is already better in especially what we're doing in the restaurant use case, is that now you can do things that are multimodal. You can actually say things and then basically change your mind and be like, hey, actually no, I want this. And it'll understand you, it'll comprehend that. Versus I think, the state of the art of how we know it has always been, hey, do this one thing and it'll tell you that one thing and that's it. And you kind of have to go step by step by step, almost kind of like an IVR tree where you're
Yep.
pressing one to do this or two to do that. That's I think what when people think like voice AI, they think they immediately gravitate towards that. But the state of the art now with all these large language models that are coming out and are at the cutting edge is the fact that you can go multimodal and make it a first class experience, right? You can throw voice AI several different things and have it comprehend,
Mhm.
right? And I think that is a tectonic shift from where we were, 5, 10 years ago, even. being able to actually do what you would think, obviously humans can do, and to now have a voice AI be able to comprehend and do those things in multimodal is something that I think we really dreamed of, but now is actually becoming a real reality. And so we're doing this in the restaurant industry, but imagine you wake up and like you said, you ask for the weather, you maybe have it read your emails, and then you say, hey, for lunch I want so and so, and it actually just does it, right? The AI just comprehends and does it, versus you having to again do all these things with your hand at the moment, and you have to do you got to open in that instance that I just explained. You're opening three different apps to do the same thing versus just saying it.
Yeah.
It's much of a more beautiful and easier experience. It's as if you're talking to someone, and it's like you have your own basically personal assistant that's always there for you in the background.
Well, and the thing that try and remind our listeners about, and I'd love to have you talk a little bit about it, Adam, is you talked about these huge language models. Everybody's you have to be living under a rock to not have heard about ChatGPT over the last 6 months or so. In general, though, talk to me a little bit about how the AI is different than an IVR, because that IVR is very static. It's somebody set it up to say push one, push two, and then recorded voice recordings that go along with that. Where AI, I think, is so powerful, and I want our listeners to understand is every day it's getting better. Every single transaction it's learning, and it's learning what's working and what's not working.
That's right.
And it's going to continue to get better. So talk to me a little bit about why you think that's so powerful and such a departure. You talked about it as a tectonic shift. It's such a departure from what we've had in the past. And I'd love to have our listeners get a little bit of education on why that's so critical to getting us to where the utopia is, where I do have a voice AI in my pocket that knows who I am and knows that I like to drink green tea, and I knows that I like to, this and that, versus my wife who doesn't like green tea and she likes, sweet and low, and I like, Splenda or whatever, whatever it is in our
Right.
tea. So, but these are things that people don't quite grasp, that don't live in this space every day. And so I'd love to have you help them understand
Yeah.
that.
I can't pinpoint the actual analogy here, but it's almost like the shift I'm talking about. It's like going from dial-up to, going to that high-speed internet and
Mm-hmm.
beyond. Really, what we're talking about in terms of shift. With the IVR, it's very binary, right? It's very static. It's if this, then that. You're not. You can only do so much, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not free flow. It's not conversational, right? It's very rules based.
Yes.
Versus what AI is doing here, it's basically again, it's allowing you to be like human. It's allowing you to talk how you would otherwise talk to the cashier that always has picked up your phone on the other end for years,
Uh-huh.
and you being able to have this natural free flow dialogue, and the systems being able to pick up exactly what you're saying, ask the follow-up questions, right? And by the way, all that time it's also learning who you are, and upselling you on your favorite drink that you forgot perhaps, or the brownie that you always get that you no longer, you for whatever reason you might have forgotten, really making you feel like a VIP every single time versus a brand new customer, right? Like sometimes you call these restaurants and they don't even know who you are, and you're a regular for the last decade.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't be like that in today's day and age. So really, what I stress is that it's the true human conversation is now possible with AI. It's no longer press one to do this. Okay, you went through a couple of different prompts. Okay, now press three. You can go from, it rather than pressing that one to just going from one to five to back to one to four, whatever, in a very simple conversational dialogue versus having to go through hoops and really frustrating customers along the way, right? The first thing that I'm sure many of us that are listening, it's like the first thing you do is you hit zero when you hear
Yeah.
these bots, right? And it's just so annoying because
Or you scream representative into the phone.
that's the first
Representative,
thing.
let me talk to somebody.
Exactly. And so I think over the years, that's another thing too, that people need to understand that this technology is coming. It actually really works. You got to give it a shot. Sometimes you hear that AI voice and you're like, this sounds like this is something I'm going to hit zero on. And we see that happen today, right? There are a certain subset of customers that won't even give it the time of day because of the nuances of, the IVRs that they've experienced for a very long time.
Well, and that I guess is always been intriguing to me, Adam, and I think it's something that's critical for people to understand is not a binary decision as well. If a restaurant brand chooses to move forward with a solution like yours or any of the competitors that you alluded to, it's not like the guests don't have a choice. McDonald's learned early on that when they said
Mhm.
you're only allowed to order through a kiosk, there are guests that are not going to want to do that, and they're going to lose them, or they're going to throw a fit, or
Right.
and it'll turn into some viral TikTok video of somebody screaming at a kiosk trying to get what they want. So I guess talk to me about the opt out. I'm a guest, and I know that or the AI can't get me what I want. I've got 4 children. 2 of them are extremely picky, and so from time to time, it's not a menu item. They have all of the ingredients, but it's not a menu item. And so the AI or a kiosk or an online ordering site may not be able to do that, whereas a human might be like, oh, we can put that all of that together. So, which I think AI is going to get there, and I think if it's not there today, it's certainly going to get there where it can understand that language. But for those consumers that choose not to engage with it, what does that process look like? And if I was a restaurateur and if I can get 50% of these orders into AI, it's that much better. And then it goes to 60 and then it goes to 70. So talk to me a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. And I think at Kia, we have a very pragmatic approach around this that I think customers really love, right? Restaurants really love, consumers really love. We are the only company that offers true human in the loop capabilities.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is, let's say you're ordering with the AI, everything is going great. All of a sudden you go through a tunnel rather than what others in the space are doing, which is trying to repeat trying to ask you what the question was again, right? Or really make you go back to that AI. We actually have a different approach. And so what happens in those situations is we trigger, think of it as like a bat signal. It's like, hey, this customer needs help. We got to bring in some help. And so an agent, a representative from our side, will actually jump into the middle of the call and take over. Think of it as, going from the Tesla autopilot
Uh-huh.
to you getting like a little bump on the road and you're like, oh crap, I need to take over. Right? This is our version of that effectively, where we're basically taking control of the wheel and making sure the guest doesn't get irate. They have help, right? They have a real human being that jumps in and takes care of the rest of their order. They're not having to repeat their order or anything like that. It's literally coming in. Think of it as a baton pass, and boom, they take the rest of their order. We confirm the order, and off it goes into the POS system. So that way, we capture the order, right? We're not sending it back to the store and making the cashiers have to again take the order. It is a true fully service solution where Kia is taking all those calls off the front line and doing them.
I think that's an amazing portion of the solution that I think again prevents people from going there. And I know for years there was a guy that I know that founded Sync 3 who did call center stuff, and they had
Yeah,
a similar solution when they started doing. Steve and I would talk about it. He's like, yeah. We try and do as many as we can, but you know what? At some point, somebody at the local store needs to talk to this guest, and so we got to be able
right.
to figure out how that baton pass. And so I love that you guys have figured out that. The last piece I want to dig in on, Adam, is just there's 7,000 ways to order things. There's,
Yes.
I don't know, 300 million, 350 million people in the United States. If you're just focusing on this vertical, all of us speak differently. All of us have different, we don't speak like a robot. And so you've got voice inflection, you've got secret menu items, you've got the way that I've been going to the store. I'm a regular and I'm always used to talk to Susie, and Susie knows what I want. And, talk to me a little bit about how you guys are tackling those challenges, whether it's accents, whether it's weird menu items that come about. I guess let's talk through that, because I think that's another hindrance that a lot of people don't. They can't conceive of a world where a computer can comprehend as well as they, and you live in that computer world. I'm talking to my CTO recently. You talk about Tesla. I happen to drive a Tesla. I don't say it to brag, but it's just the computer's constantly learning. It's a computer with wheels and and a motor. That's really what it is. It's just constantly learning of road conditions and how do you drive. And when my wife gets into it, it's a different experience than when I get into it. Same with your AI in your pocket. But for those that don't comprehend that the AI can learn these things and you can train it to evaluate a burger is the same thing as a sandwich at a burger joint, is the same thing as, these different ways that people may be able to do that. And the accents are going to change, but the computer can learn that. So let's talk through that I guess misnomer where people are like, you're not going to be able to understand this as well as a human might be able to.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very complex problem. And so, we've been doing this for 6 years, and it's like every time we engage with a new brand, it's like, holy crap, we just found ourselves a brand new can of worms to solve for, right? And it's very exciting because, even though it has taken a long time to get to very much autonomous state in some brands, it's exciting because you see a path. There is a path, regardless of how long it takes. We can kind of see, okay, we got to solve for these types of things within our own models. To give you perspective, an average pizza place has about 26,000 permutations of how you can order different things.
Wow,
So you can imagine,
26,000.
yeah. So you can imagine for a company like ours to be able to learn that. It's not like you just snap a finger and all of a sudden, you've understood all those 26,000 permutations. So we do a couple of different things here. We take a very buy versus build approach when it comes to things that we can leverage that are off the shelf that help us understand the NLU aspects, the actual speech to text aspects, right? That's been done by the greats in the industry for the last 10, 15 years, and we're not in a position to go invent the wheel there. So we take those off the shelf and we implement them at Kea. And then the actual model part, it's a constant training, right? We even, like I said, even if we start with a great pizza place today, a great burger place today, and we've done all the listening into calls, we've tried to map out all the different permutations. There's always going to be that new situation, that new way somebody said an order. They might have said, for example, I want a meat lovers pizza, and at a different, and what they really mean is they want a pizza pizza because it just sounds a little bit different at a different brand. And so now we have to categorize all the different ways people might say something, but they actually mean something else. So I would compare it to, really, this is a marathon, right? We're not trying to say, hey, we want 100% automation today. We actually think of it as, look, we're going to start with 15%. We're going to start going from 15% autonomous to maybe 18, 19% in the next couple of months, and keep building it. So ultimately it does do what everything that you want it to do, right? But it's a very, very methodical approach. And that's why we have the humans in the loop. We tell our customers, like, look, this is part of the plan, right? We think that if it was 100% autonomous on day one, it actually would be a subpar experience.
Yeah.
It would really not understand the customer truly, and it would ultimately go back to the store. And we see that in implementations, right? We see others that are trying to do that, and we try to do it fully autonomous before, but it just kind of fell flat on its face. It's like, look, we're not quite there yet. Let's learn about the brand. These guys have been doing their menu, and their customers have been there for years. How can you learn that in one day? You can't. One other thing I'll say is that whenever we do work with these brands, it's almost like they're helping each other out. These models are getting better.
Yes.
You add a pizza place and you add another pizza place. Well, the reality is those pizza places aren't actually too different from one another.
Yeah,
So
24 of the 26,000 permeations are probably the same,
yeah,
and you've only
they're
really got to
pretty
now
much
manage for that 2,000 or whatever.
exactly. So we want to we're continuing to take learnings from other brands, apply them to others, so that slowly but surely there will be a world where AI is actually doing majority of this, and we can feel comfortable in doing that because it's had enough runtime, it's had enough learnings. I think we're still in the early innings of that.
Hmm.
And our way to bridge this world into reality is, of course, having that human in the loop there who's also helping train the system as well.
So I'm going to ask you to look into the crystal ball to use that analogy. Where's it going, Adam? Is it going to a place where everything is going to be autonomous? The cashier at the store is going to be autonomous. It's not just dealing with phone orders. I'm going to have some digital robot that's going to take my voice order. Is that where it's going? Talk to me about the future of where you think voice ordering and AI is going to impact the restaurant industry 3, 5, 10 years from now.
Yeah, I think when I think about this, I get the goosebumps because it's already happening in many states around the country. You look at Donato's Pizza, one of my favorite pizza places, and the Grody family who founded that is actually now deploying. They have already deployed like an automated pizza maker. Effectively, it'll build the entire pizza without any human intervention, and it'll even put. They've got like a pepperoni cutter that'll cut the pepperonis and place them on top of the pizza perfectly, with enough space in between and everything. It's incredible. You see Miso Robotics doing some phenomenal work, as you've probably seen with the Flippy inside of White Castle,
Yep.
where burgers are being flipped, fries are being made autonomously. You see, I really see that there will be humanless restaurants in the very near future. It will become more economical, right? I compare this era to where the PC was, tens of thousands of dollars, right? It's costs a lot right now to get into this space, but by having the technology, you're paving the path to be a front runner in the space, right? By embedding these systems, and by us, commercializing this more, it'll make it more cost effective for other brands to jump on the bandwagon. But some of the larger chains, which we have the privilege of working with today, they're already implementing this, right?
Uh-huh.
They're thinking about how do we put this across all of our other brands and get the testing going so that we're ready for this future, which is going to look like $30 an hour, right? On the coast,
Yep.
that's already the case.
Yep.
Where fully loaded, you're paying 30 an hour. In the next couple of years with inflation, are people really going to pay $15 for a cheeseburger? I think at that point you're going to start to see even more significant decline in same store sales growth. And so I really, if I were to look in that crystal ball, I think we're already seeing those signs of having that fully autonomous world come to fruition, similar to how Tesla is creating that autopilot for all their cars. I think the same is going to happen within the restaurant space, whether that be from food production to actually taking down orders to delivering the orders. We're in for I think a really incredibly exciting roller coaster ride.
Love it. I love the vision of where you think things are going, and I agree with you that that's something that is coming. How quickly it'll come and how fast consumers will adopt it, nobody ever knows. But I think it's pretty awesome. The other thing I guess I would say is I would hope, and I'll put that out into the world, that the engines that are living within the stores, the POS systems, democratize their ability to get this data into them, no different than the web did, web 2 and web 3 did, so that
Right.
companies like yourselves can continue to innovate, because oftentimes that's the sticking point. That is the friction point, is getting the order to where it needs to get to be part of the standard workflow that the staff has to happen. So that will be a
100%.
critical part of it. And I guess I'll just go on record to say that is going to be critical to getting to this utopia that we talk about, where these things can happen. So, Adam, is there anything that we missed in our conversation? I know we're butting up against time. Is there anything that we missed that you would want our listeners to know about before I ask them or ask you how to get in touch with your team?
Yeah, no, I think the last point you mentioned, I just want to mention that um, the world is really, I think, to your point, becoming very much open, as opposed to 5 years ago. All these POS systems, all these providers didn't really want to open up their systems, but now that's really, I would say, dramatically shifted, right? We've got
Yes.
incredible partners like Noah Glass from Olo, who's really made it easy for startups like us to be able to join the ecosystem without having to spend, the decade plus that he did to be able to push orders into the POS by doing integration after integration after integration with what's really, as you know, a very, very fragmented market. So,
Absolutely.
Savneet Singh from PAR, right? Same thing, same philosophy. All these doors are being opened for companies like ours, and I think that's truly accelerating and pushing the future forward, as opposed to kind of having that more closed mindset and not allowing innovators to innovate and push the industry forward. So really, really excited about that. And I will just say that if anyone's interested in this technology, would certainly love to speak with them. Feel free to visit us on our website. It's just Kea.Ai. You can book a demo with us, try out and see actually how the voices interact, how orders happen today with restaurants, and get in touch with us there.
I appreciate that. I'll throw that in the show notes. So it's Kea, not it's Kea.Ai.
Kea, yeah, just like
Yeah,
the
just
carrot.
for those that are audio only, because they may be out shopping for a new car. Since they may think of the Kia, automobile manufacturer. So, Adam, I love the backstory. I love what you guys are doing. I do believe that it is the way of the future. I do believe that it's going to continue to grow, and I appreciate all of the hard work that you guys are doing to help drive that behavior and drive the capabilities for consumers to get a better guest experience, because that's ultimately what we talk about a lot on the show is how do we deliver a better guest experience. And so to our listeners, guys, we know that you guys have got lots of choices. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, whatever your mechanism is to capture the content, we did launch on YouTube. Have been also posting on LinkedIn. So if your preference is to go to YouTube or your preference is to see it on LinkedIn, connect with RTG on both of those platforms. Adam, thank you so much for your time, and to our listeners, make it a great day.
Thank you so much, Jeremy.